You are listening to the Bat Flip Podcast, a baseball podcast from Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Damian and Matt.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Bat Flip Podcast. My name is Damian, here with my co-host, Matt. We are coming to you a day later than normal. We're coming to you on July 14th of 2021 on a Wednesday. How you doing, Matt?
Doing pretty good. Just hanging out. Been doing some stuff around the house last few days, and just hanging out. So, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Went to a Dodger game this weekend for my birthday. It was last Thursday. Went there and watched them lose to the last place Diamondbacks. So
All right,
that was pretty awesome.
that's fun.
Yeah, not
So,
really.
I'm sure it's still fun to get back in the ballpark.
No, yeah, it was fun to be with that many people back in a ballpark. I mean, the stadium, even though they were losing, it was still electric. It was really fun. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit because they had some history happen this weekend. So, but we had the All-Star Game festivities this week, and we're coming to you the day after the All-Star Game happened. But it really got kicked off on Sunday with the MLB Draft.
Yeah. So this is the first year that the draft has been like connected to the All-Star game. Before, usually it was a little bit earlier on in June, so that teams could get those rookies started in the short season ball. But this year they've moved it back to kind of be connected to the draft to the All-Star game, so they'll have a little bit more attention on it, and people will watch it, and also the fact that they didn't want to keep drafting players during the end of the college season while they're still with their teams and stuff. They can't be there, they can't celebrate. In fact, there was guys a few years ago I remember get drafted during a game
Yeah.
where I think it was a Florida guy that they were playing on TV, and that the draft was going, and they get drafted literally like while he was hitting, and they were yelling at him from the stands, "Hey, you just got drafted!"
Wasn't it Alex Fideo? Wasn't he the pitcher?
I think it was actually Jonathan India. They were both
Was
on
it
the
India?
same team. Yeah, I think Jonathan India was the guy that got drafted in the middle of the game, but Alex Fideo might have been too. Or Fiedo, excuse me. They might have both, because they were both drafted, real high and from the um,
From Florida.
from Florida. So
Yeah. Well, we wanted to bring to a couple teams that we thought really had a good draft, and a couple names that we kind of wanted to highlight, and maybe some teams that we thought maybe didn't have as good of a draft, or names that kind of fell that we didn't expect. So, who's the first team that you want to mention that had a really good draft in your eyes?
well, how about the first team with the team with the first pick? I thought the Pittsburgh Pirates did a really good job. With the first pick, they selected, and there was nobody knew who the first pick was going to be up until the draft time. That's one thing you do like about the baseball draft, is that typically you don't know, because a lot of times, like, football, it's been leaked like 3 days ahead of time that, oh yeah, the team they're going to pick, whoever. Or basketball, it's the same way. In fact, basketball, you usually know like right when the lottery happens who they're going to pick. But for baseball, you never know until the day of. And the Pirates picked the catcher out of Louisville, Henry Davis. Um, he's a junior. He's got really good tools. He was ranked as a top 10 prospect by pretty much everybody, and he was ranked number 5 on MLB Pipeline. But one interesting thing about the Major League Baseball process and draft is that your money you get to spend in the draft and to sign all your players is tied to your pick. So you get a bonus pool, and that's really what you're up against, more so than drafting players where you feel like they should be drafted. It's more of, we're going to draft a guy that we can sign for the right price so we can draft guys later. So basically, they drafted Henry Davis, who probably wasn't the number 1 overall player on anybody's board, but they're probably going to cut a little bit of a deal with him, and that allowed them to pick a top 20 prospect in the second round in Anthony Solometo, and also in the third round pick a high school pitcher slash, I think, infielder named Bubba Chandler, who um, was actually, and those guys are going to be expensive because they're both high school guys, and they're going to have to buy out their commitments to college, especially for Bubba Chandler, who was signed as a football player as well in college, so with Clemson. So um, Pittsburgh got 3 guys who were considered potential like top 25, top 30 picks, in the draft. They got 3 of them. So I thought they did a really great job with that.
Yeah, going into the draft, Henry Davis was 5, Solamento was 17, and Bubba Chandler was 21 on MLB Pipeline's boards. So they got 3 top 20 players. I mean, if you want, sure, Bubba Chandler, you could throw him up to top 20, and one of those other guys would drop out. But I wasn't at the time. I would say I wasn't a biggest fan of them drafting Henry Davis over number 1 overall. He was still going to be a top 5 to top 7 pick anyways. Um, but I liked Marcelo Mayer coming out of high school. I mean, I know everybody was talking about him the most, but to me, that prep shortstop, from the game, the film and stuff that I watched, he was supposed to be a stud player. And I know you don't draft for need overall, but for me, the Pirates, they're still a little ways away. And the type of player that I think Marcelo Mayer could be I think it's way above what Henry Davis could be. Um, I think that Marcelo Mayer could be one of the best players in baseball when he gets eventually. And I'm not a big fan of them not taking the biggest or the best prospect you can at number 1 overall. But I will say, for what they did and the way they manipulated the bonus pool money to be able to draft Anthony Solamento, another guy who I'm really, really high on, and then Bubba Chandler, who's, like you said, he was a signed football commit for Clemson to be a quarterback. So, I mean, we're just talking about Trevor Lawrence just got taken number 1 overall in the NFL draft. And their Clemson, Deshaun Watson is another guy. They breed quarterbacks. So to be able to buy him out of that, that commitment from a 3rd round pick it's a big deal for the Pirates.
Yeah, no doubt. It was big for the Pirates. But who did you have your eye on in the draft that you really liked from pick wise?
So I had a couple. I'll go with the Tigers on this one because I know we can talk a little bit more about the Red Sox in a minute. But the Tigers, they drafted Jackson Jobe, um, number 1, or their number 1 pick at number 3 overall. He was a number 7 ranked prospect, but he's a high school prep arm. Um, was the highest ranked high school arm out of any of them, and he has an electric fastball. I think he can be somebody that's, he's going to take some time to develop. I think he struggles with command a little bit, but the Tigers were one of the teams. Who did they get in the 2nd round? That was really high. Oh, Ty Madden, that was the other
Yeah,
pitcher. SEC pitcher, not SEC. He came from Texas. My bad.
yeah,
Um, he was supposed to be a top 10 pick as well. He's ranked number 9 on MLB's Pipeline's board, and he fell to the 32nd pick, and the Tigers got him there. So there, and then Isaac Pacheco, even at pick 39, he's a prep shortstop that I was at the end of the 1st round. I was interested in the Dodgers drafting, and the Tigers got him right there at the top of the 2nd round as well. So I think the Tigers had a really good draft.
yeah. That goes along with a couple guys. Dylan Smith out of Alabama has a really good fastball, and then Tyler Madison, who was a prep outfielder, really good power, power hitting, left-handed power. So, we don't know, and those guys are obviously more risky, but a couple of interesting picks there as well. Um, Couple more highlights. The top college arm off the board at number 2 was Jack Leiter from Vanderbilt, and he was a guy who a lot of the year people were kind of thinking might go number 1. I think teams got a little bit, or at least the Pirates, because they were the only team ahead of the Rangers. The Pirates got a little bit worried probably about his command. He did get his walks up there just a little bit at times this year, although he was absolutely disgustingly good. Um, they might worry a little bit about him professionally, and his size isn't elite at 6'1", 200 pounds. Um, and then, of course, we a lot of talk was made all year, and for the last couple years, really the biggest name in the draft ended up going number 10 with Kumar Rocker.
Yeah, he's a pitcher from Vanderbilt. Like he's a big guy, 6'5", 245. I know you have a little bit more experience because you went and watched him in person. Um, the big reason why he dropped is that he pretty much his stuff really fell off. Like you said, he's a guy who was touching 98, 99 at times, and this year he was at the SEC tournament. I think you said he was 91, 92,
Yeah, I mean,
maybe.
he reached back a couple times, got 94, but it wasn't like he had been an easy mid 90s velocity, being able to reach back for more, his at times in his career, and then late in the season, especially this year, he fell off a bit. He dropped his velocity, dropped some. His command went downhill a lot. And he got lit up in the SEC tournament and in the College World Series. That probably cost Vanderbilt the championship.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good pick for the Mets at number 10. If they can get him right back on, that's a guy who is a potential top 5 pick at times. Now, it might be a struggle, and being such a big guy, we do see that big pitchers usually have a tendency to fall out of rhythm with their command and their mechanics. So maybe if the Mets can find a way to, harness Kumar Rocker back into the player he was a freshman, sophomore year, then that could be a steal for them at 10 because I think I think they had to go over slot for him even. So that might be, they're taking a bigger risk on him because they had to dump more money in because he got drafted number 10.
Yeah, no doubt. So that was definitely an interesting pick there. A few others that were kind of interesting. I thought Will Bednar, who was the College World Series most outstanding player, ended up going to the San Francisco Giants at number 14. Um, and then there was some other, obviously the baseball draft. There's so much is made out of the being able to sign the players and stuff. There's guys that were rated top 5 that fell into the late teens. The guys that were rated outside the top 30 that were picked in the top 10. So um, you just never know. But definitely an interesting draft so far.
Yeah, another one that I really liked was Gunnar Hoagland to the Blue Jays.
Yeah,
He was a guy who he probably coming into the year was thought to probably be a top 10 pick as well, maybe even top 5. Um, and he ended up getting his season cut short in May, and he had to have Tommy John surgery, so he's out 12 to 18 months. So I think that kind of hurt his draft stock a little bit, and he ended up falling down to 19 at the Blue Jays. But they're also a team that usually has a lot of good young pitching. Like Noah Syndergaard was the guy that came up with them. I mean, they traded him before he really got up there, but they have some other arms that I think they could develop Gunnar Hoagland in a really good way.
yeah, no doubt. And he's got a great breaking ball out of Ole Miss. I saw him. I didn't see him in person, but I did see him. I might have seen him in person actually when he was a freshman, but I have seen him a little bit. Um, watch him on TV and stuff. He's definitely a good looking arm. So very interesting stuff. I like what we saw. From the draft. I thought it was cool. They were a lot more. As mentioned, with it being tied to the All Star game, there were a lot more players in attendance at the draft.
Yeah.
A lot more players when they got picked. You could see you could see their reactions, and because in the past it's been, guy gets picked while their season's still going on, so you never see any of them at the draft or anything. So I thought that was pretty cool to get to see a little bit of, and good stuff. I definitely definitely enjoy it, and I'm excited to see where these guys end up. You could end up seeing a couple of them, like maybe a Ryan Cusick if the Braves picked, or Gavin Williams from Cleveland, someone like that who's a high velocity college arm. You could end up seeing a couple of them make contributions, at the end of this year as relievers. But you could, some of these guys, it might be 5 years, but they could end up being the best player in the major leagues at some point. You just never know. That's
Right.
one thing that's fun about the draft. So
Yeah, you never know who it could be, and because they do have the minor leagues, it could be years down the road before you see any of them actually. So, but I do agree with you. I do like the way that they moved the draft to the beginning. Basically, it's kind of the kickoff to All Star Weekend. I mean, maybe you could say the futures game, but I really like the draft being there. And like you said, the amount of players that were able to show up, and it's just a much bigger venue than MLB Studios which they were doing it before. So, but like you said, start of the All Star Weekend. We'll jump over to the Home Run Derby now, which was the pretty much I think the biggest event of All Star Weekend. I mean, I don't know how you feel, but I think everybody looks forward to that more than the All Star Game, anyways. And we had Shohei Ohtani in it, Juan Soto, defending winner Pete Alonso. Uh, who else? Trey Mancini was in there. Trevor Story. Um,
yep,
it was a good home run
Joey
derby.
Gallo,
Joey Gallo was another one.
Salvador
Matt
Perez.
Olson, I think, was an Olson in it too.
Yep,
Yeah,
Olson was in
Olson,
it.
Salvador Perez.
Yep.
It was a good home run derby. I didn't get to watch all of it. I did see the Shohei versus Juan Soto. I think that was an awesome matchup. They ended up tying in regular time. They went to a 1 minute swing off, tied the 1 minute swing off, went to 3 swings. Juan Soto hit all 3 of them for homers, and I think Shohei missed his second one
He
That
missed
ended
his
up,
first one.
was it his first one?
Yeah, he popped it
Um,
up.
so that ended up kicking him out in the first round. So it was kind of disappointing because I know everybody was looking forward to seeing Shohei Ohtani hit so many home runs, but I think he still hit what 30 something. I mean, in that one little
He
round,
hit 28
28.
in the regular, and then I think when they got the extra minute for the tie, after the tie, he hit three more, so or the 30 seconds or whatever. I
I
think he
think
ended
it.
up with 31. So
So
it
it
might have
was,
just been 28. That might have been what Soto hit because of the three swing off. But
yeah, maybe it was. Anyways, I mean, I know people expected. I mean, there was a lot of talk that Shohei Ohtani was going to win it or he's going to automatically be in the finals against Joey Gallo, and I believe both of them got knocked out in the first round, even.
they
Uh,
did.
so you had, it ended up being, I think, Trey Mancini and Trevor Story, and Trey Mancini ended up beating Trevor Story, and then it was Olson and Pete
No,
Alonso,
it
or
was
is this Perez?
Soto and Peter Alonso.
Oh, Soto. I don't know why I
Yep.
keep saying Perez.
Yep.
Soto and Pete Alonso.
Yep.
Alonso won that one. Mancini beat Trevor Story. So it had Trey Mancini versus Pete Alonso in the finals. And then Pete Alonso ended up winning it and defending his home run derby championship.
Yeah, and, some cool things about it. We saw, obviously, with it being in Coors, we saw several home runs hit over 500 feet. In fact, one was hit 520 feet, I believe, by Soto, and that was the longest home run in home run derby history, um, or at least since Statcast was started being counted. Um, and then I thought, I thought everybody in the home run derby, did pretty well. I was a little disappointed at Joey Gallo. um, he really struggled for this first like half of his round, and then he picked it up and almost came back at the end, but he couldn't quite get there. But everyone kind of did well. I wish they would go to a format where in the first round that just the top four advance instead of having the bracket, because
Right.
Otani was like third out of the amount of home runs hit, but he didn't hit as many as Soto. They tied, so they should have both moved on. But um, I think the fans there were real unhappy that Otani got eliminated in the first round because they really wanted to see him keep going because he did well in the first round. But you had like Trevor Story hit like 20, and he made it after Otani hit like 28. So, um, and then I thought Salvador Perez was real impressive too because he's been around a long time, and I didn't know he had the kind of power that he showed off in the home run derby. He hit something. He hit almost 30, and but he was just matched up against Pete Alonso, who hit 35 in the first round, which was insane. So
Yeah. And Pete Alonso came out after and said that he's the greatest power hitter on the planet. So we'll see. We'll see if he can defend that crown for a third time next year in Los Angeles. Sounds like
yep,
Tatis wants to be in it next year. Maybe Jock Peterson go back in it again after his run that he had in Cleveland, which was I
yeah,
think him and Alonso were in it for a while
yeah.
against each other. So
Vlad Jr.
yeah,
He did it, and then Acuna, obviously with his injury, which we'll talk about in a little bit, wasn't in it, but I think he'd probably do it again at some point.
yeah. So we'll see what that happens. But let's move on to the All Star game. Actually, we had Shohei Ohtani start on the mound and also as the leadoff DH. So that was the first time in history that the pitcher in the he made history this weekend with pretty much everything he did. So it like we talk about a lot with Shohei Ohtani. The game overall, it was. I don't think it was the most entertaining game. They had some, Vladimir Guerrero hit a monster homer off Corbin Burns as they were talking to Fernando Tatis.
Yeah,
JT Realmuto hit a homer. Mike Zunino hit a homer. But other than that, I mean, it was kind of a quiet kind of all star game to me. I mean, I really wasn't too thrilled, not thrilled, but I wasn't. It didn't pull me in usually how an all star game really does.
yeah, and I'm a guy that I don't. I think it's really cool for a lot of different reasons to have the All Star game, and for I know the players. That's a good honor for them to get to represent their team to get picked for it. Um, I think that there's a lot of times um, you look at the the fact that the fans get to come in and see all these players, and you look at all the festivities around it, like the home run derby and the the celebrity softball game, all that kind of stuff too. I think people like that a lot. But the big thing for me is I just I don't love watching a game where the players aren't fully invested in the game, and also where the players aren't really they're not really giving it their all. and then the fact that the game just doesn't really count for anything. So you don't care who wins. And it's always cool to see. Occasionally there'll be some big moment, like people remember some stuff like Bo Jackson's leadoff home run or Ichiro's inside the park home run, stuff like that. But you just don't see too much anymore. Of that kind of stuff. It really just doesn't mean all that much. It's a cool event, but it's not really the most fun thing to watch on TV. Now, in recent years, there has been some cool things, like they'll talk to a player during their at bat or something. And of course, if it wasn't, I didn't think that went all that well this time, but
No.
um, it was. But typically, that's kind of a cool thing for them to do. So, but we'll see. I definitely, I caught parts of the game, and um, there's just not that many highlights of it. It's cool occasionally that you'll see an all-star too, like that'll come up and just have a huge game, kind of in their first time in the all-star game. They're maybe from a team that doesn't that doesn't get talked about a lot, that get represented very often in the media, a team that's not very good, they'll come out and have a really good game. And the guys like, and sometimes it is from a team that is good, like a guy like Willie Peralta come out and strike out the side. I mean, sorry, Freddie Peralta.
Freddie
I
Peralta,
get
yeah.
all the Peraltas mixed up. There's like 3 or 4 of them. They're all pitchers, um,
I think they've
but
all
yeah,
played for the Brewers at one
and
point
I
too.
think they have. I know Willie Peralta did, but I do get those guys mixed up sometimes. But yeah, I think that's kind of a cool thing to see. I think a few years ago, Shane Bieber kind of had his breakout, um, in the All Star game where he came out and struck out the side. I think it was Shane Bieber that did that. And, it's cool for obviously the Otani thing, even though, as we kind of discussed last week, I wasn't a huge fan of him, being selected as a pitcher necessarily, because I don't think he's an all-star level pitcher yet, but it was still cool to have him be able to, um, him being on the mound and stuff. It's definitely a special thing to happen. But it was a cool, it's a cool game and everything, but um it's a, you have to take it for what it is. So and I'm just not a huge all-star person, but that's just me. So
Yeah, and that's why I think everybody looks more towards the home run derby, anyways.
yeah.
And that's the big event of All Star Weekend. So, and this year you had a ton of people opt out as well. A ton of All Stars that didn't
Yeah, you had
didn't
three or
even try
four,
to
but
play.
I know Mookie Betts didn't play, and
There
um
was a lot more. I know all the
yeah,
Astros did
the
and stuff.
Astros, yeah, Mookie Betts. So
Let's jump over to our division breakdown. We haven't done one in about a month, so kind of get you guys caught up at the All Star break being a good time to do this. Kind of where all the standings are sitting right now. So we'll start off in the AL East where we got Boston is still leading this division, albeit by a game and a half, and them and Tampa Bay have really separated themselves from the division with Toronto and the Yankees both being 8 games back.
yeah, it's funny with Tampa Bay. You never. It's so weird how it happens. Um, every year, it seems like they only had one All Star, and it was Mike Zunino, who a lot of people don't really think of as an All Star caliber player. He actually hit a enormous home run in the game yesterday, but
Yeah.
aside from that, it's one of those things where it's pretty cool that uh, that the Rays are able to do this every year. But Boston, they're still chugging along. That offense is still really good. Xander Bogaerts, JD Martinez. I don't really see them slowing down, and I do think that they're going to be a team that's able to pick up a starter that really they still got enough holes to really make some improvements to their roster over the break, so or before the trade deadline in a couple weeks. So um, I definitely look for them to be aggressive and try to go out and get a starter and maybe another bullpen piece, even though their bullpen's been good. So
Yeah, and I mean Baltimore's at the bottom of this division, 26 games back, but I do look that I think that Toronto or the Yankees could make some sort of a move and make a jump or a push to try and get one of those wild card spots because you have Oakland back here. We'll talk about in a little bit. They're 3.5 back at the division, but they're the second wild card team right now. Um, and they've kind of fallen off lately, and I don't think they're going to be able to really sustain unless they make some big move at the deadline as well. But I would look for a team like the Yankees to try and get a big name at the deadline. I know we've talked about the Yankees a lot, about them struggling and waiting for them to make that move, and they haven't yet. But I think that the frustration is starting to grow on the Yankees, and that they're going to be a team to really watch out for and try and make a push because I mean they're only 4.5 back of the wild card right now. So
Yeah, and the Yankees have a lot of problems. I think one of their big problems right now is the fact that their two superstar pitchers, their closer and their starter, have both really been struggling lately. And coincidentally, it's come right as the whole substance crackdown um, came about. So one good thing for them is that Garrett Cole threw a really good game in his last start before the break. Threw like 130 pitches, pitched a gem. So that's a good sign for them that maybe is going to get back on track. But Chapman's really been struggling since the crackdown on the substances, um, and it's a team that I think it's kind of a um, it's a team that I think it's kind of a struggle right now. And when it comes to New York teams when they start struggling, it's real easy for it to get in their head with the way the media is up there. But they're still 3 games above 500, and they're a team that's got that talent, certainly capable of going on a run for a week where they win 7 in a row and then you're right back in it. So, um, as a wild card. So, um, the Blue Jays too, another team that we really expected to do well. They've battled injuries in their lineup and rotation. Um, but they're kind of in the same boat as the Yankees. They just don't get as much attention with it. There's some things that if the Blue Jays could really put it together. I mean, they got 2 MVP candidates in their lineup. So, um, and then they've got some other good role players there too. So they just haven't been able to put together the pitching staff fully, and a lot of that's come because of injury. But um, it is what it is for them right now. I mean, you're 3 games above 500 at the break, but you gotta you gotta figure it out before the trade deadline. If you're gonna buy, sell, you're sitting there 8 games out of the division. So I mean, that's a tough hill to climb at this point.
absolutely. Well, let's jump over to the AL Central now, where you got the Chicago White Sox kind of distancing themselves as the class of this division. 8 games up on the Cleveland Indians, who have really struggled lately. Their last 10, they're 3-7, and they've kind of took a turn for the worst. Then you got Detroit, Minnesota back there, both 15 games, and then Kansas City about 18 games out.
Yeah, this is just a runaway at this point. The Indians had enough stuff to, if they were fully healthy, everything went the right way, they could handle it. But the you look at the White Sox, and I mean their rotation is better than anybody could have thought it would be because Giolito's been good. He hasn't been as good as he had been in the last couple of years, but he's been good enough. And but you look at the fact that Carlos Rodon, who nobody expected to be what he's been, has been one of the best pitchers in baseball. You look at Dylan Cease has taken a step forward, and Lance Lynn, has been really good. I mean, you got 4 pitchers in that rotation that have been really, really good. You add in the fact that everyone knew their lineup was going to be pretty good coming into the season, and um, that's a pretty unstoppable team right now, and they're looking like possible favorites in the AL right now. So,
Yeah, and
very,
they're
very good, very, very good looking season so far from the White Sox.
getting ready to get Eloy back.
Yeah,
Eloy has gone on
yep.
rehab assignments, and I don't know quite how long he's supposed to be on a rehab, but he's really soon to coming back. I mean, I would say maybe in under a month he'll be back. So
Yeah.
depending on how long they want to see about that pec. But like you said, it's a runaway. I expect them to make some sort of a small move at the deadline, maybe just to get another arm for bullpen or something. But I don't know what the White Sox really need to, obviously they have this division in hand. It's going to be interesting with Cleveland because Cleveland's only 4.5 games out of the wild card. They have lost Shane Bieber. McKenzie's been terrible. Um, they're hitting.
Savali's hurt, isn't he?
I think Savali did get hurt as well. So
Yep.
it's going to be interesting to see if they take the road at the deadline to want to add and try and make a wild card push, and hopefully they get those guys back healthy. Because I mean, if you can get Bieber back healthy, if Savali, who's had a great season, he gets back healthy, Plesac's still there. McKenzie's a hit or miss guy, but if you can get him on track, I mean, his last start, he had like 7 innings of 1 hit ball. And I mean, I know it's against the Royals, but for a guy who struggles with command, that's a really good start for him. So, but there's also a team that they've talked about possibly selling off some pieces. And Maybe Jose Ramirez at one point. I mean, you haven't heard as much about it lately, but maybe that's a guy. Maybe even trading off some more of their pitching. But it's going to be interesting to see what Cleveland does here in the next couple weeks if they decide to make that one push for that wild card spot, or if they decide to, hey, let's just take our losses and try and come back at it next year.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And, with Cleveland, I don't think Jose Ramirez gets moved mid-season. I think he would be an off-season move, but um, you look at like maybe a Cesar Hernandez or someone like that, and Cleveland just didn't have enough offense, really. I mean, they just don't. And
Yeah. Well, and
um,
they lost Eddie Rosario too.
yeah, so injuries have hit them, and they just don't have enough offense. So, and you look at the other teams here, and obviously the Twins had been so disappointing this year, but um, Tigers and Royals, probably I probably would have expected the Tigers and Royals to be flip flopped from where they are in the standings, but um, neither one of them have been very good. They're still figuring it out. So, um, this has been an interesting division, but I think the White Sox easily run away with it at this point, and I think they can add to their bullpen. Obviously Liam Hendricks is their closer there, and he's been really good, but I think there's definitely pieces they could add there that would help them out. So.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see what they can pull off. Let's look over at the AL West now, where you got Houston's kind of taking control of this division now. They're 3.5 games up on Oakland. Who we said Oakland's in the wild card spot right now. You got Seattle is 7 games back of the division, 3.5 back of that wild card. The Angels have made a nice turnaround to get right above 500 again. They're 9 games back of the division, but only 5.5 games back of the wild card. And they made a signing today. It's not a big one, but they did sign veteran outfielder Adam Eaton for the rest of the season.
Yeah, that's cool. Adam Eaton's the guy who can probably help the Angels with their struggles in the corner outfield spots. Um, Obviously, Shohei Ohtani's carried their offense with Mike Trout out and Anthony Rendon out slash struggling when he has played. But if they get those three guys in there and fully healthy, this is a team that could make a little bit of noise. I don't see them catching the Astros, but
No.
um, and I don't see them being buyers just because while they are while they are good right now, they're so far back there. They're over 500, but it's gonna be really difficult to catch either the wild card or the division lead here. But you look at them and you got a team that there's a lot of it's showing a lot of progress this year. I feel like being having a winning record at this point is something that they haven't done in a while, and their pitching's really been worst case scenario for them. None of the guys who pitched good for them last year have pitched well for them this year. Um, Bundy has been awful. Uh, you look at Andrew Haney hasn't been as good. Um, and then you go to their acquisitions that have all struggled. Quintana has struggled mightily. Alex Cobb has been okay. Um, they just really haven't had all that much. So if they are able to add, maybe they could make a move kind of like the Reds made a couple years ago when they traded for Bauer at the deadline, when they weren't fully in contention, but they knew that they'd have him for the following year. Maybe they could find a pitcher that's something like that where, if they get really hot, maybe the A's just get ice cold or something.
Well,
They could maybe get to that wild card, but kind of build for next year.
I mean, a guy like Kyle Gibson would probably be good for that because I believe he's signed for next year. But I don't think that the wild card is directly out of contact for the Angels. They still have 9 games head to head against Oakland. So even if you can win some of those games and then get some help within the division or something, with Oakland's really been struggling lately, and you maybe make a piece. Oh, you're going to get Trout back. Rendon's going to be back, like you said. Shohei's been amazing. Fletcher's been amazing as of lately. If you can get another pitcher in there and maybe like a Kyle Gibson or somebody like you said that's signed for next year, maybe not at a super big cost, but just a help to that rotation. I don't think that the wild card is out of reach. For the Angels, is it going to be tough? Yes, but I definitely think that there is a path where they could make a run and get to the wild card.
Yeah, I mean that's what I say. Like I wouldn't sell,
Right.
and I wouldn't buy like rental players is kind of what I'm
Right.
saying. Maybe you go out and get a guy who could help you next year too. Um, maybe you go take a couple of bullpen arms on who are going to be real easy to get. That maybe you can turn around into pitching really well or something. Um, but I probably wouldn't sell any pieces. I mean, I don't really think they have many pieces to sell when it comes to like rental players if they say, oh yeah, we are out of it. But I mean, you have a lot of teams to pass to. It's not just being 5.5 games out or whatever they are. It's also you have to pass a team that the Mariners who are sitting there ahead of them in the standings, believe it or not. But also, they're still behind the Indians. They're still behind the Blue Jays, the Yankees. I mean, there's a lot of teams that they have to pass to get to that wild card level. So, even if they are able to catch the A's specifically, who's to say that they're also passing the Yankees, Blue Jays, Indians, and Mariners, and of course they could also catch the Rays instead of the A's, which I think is less likely. But I mean,
Right.
but but yeah, I mean, you look at this team, and they're good. They're just not quite good enough yet. But I mean, when I take a look at this division, I just think about what the Astros have done this year, and I know, a lot of people are, don't like the fact that they're ahead in this division, but um, they've really done such a remarkable job with, having lost, you know, really their big pitchers. Verlander still out from Tommy John last year. Garrett Cole, is in New York. Um, from for their last World Series run, and Greinke's definitely not as good as he once was, but they've kind of just reloaded. Luis Garcia's pitched so well for them. McCullers has pitched well for them. Urquidy's in there. Valdez coming back and pitching well. I mean, you've got such a good foundation there with their pitchers, and their lineups really good and hitting like they did back in 2019, 2018 when they were, in the playoffs and in the World Series and everything. So this is a team that I really think right now, you might see a 2005 rematch in the from the World Series and the American League Championship Series this year with the Astros and White Sox. So
That'll definitely be a series that'll be fun to watch if we do get that. But let's go ahead and jump over to the NL now, and we'll start with the NL East, where the New York Mets are leading this division over by 3.5 over Philadelphia, who is 6.5 back in the wild card. So it's really looking like if you don't win this division, you're pretty much going to have to, you're going to be out of the playoffs this year. You got Atlanta sitting right there, 4 games back, but they just did lose Ronald Acuna Jr. This past week to a torn ACL, so he's out for the remainder of the season.
yeah, so you look at the Mets, and they're definitely not as good as their record right now, which the record's just okay. But they've also had a lot of injuries, so they've kind of weathered the storm with a lot of one-run wins and close wins, and you know maybe a little luck too. But getting their guys back is going to help them a lot. They've missed a lot of the season has been missed by Jeff McNeil and J.D. Davis and Michael Conforto, and a lot of these guys have missed extended time this year.
DeGrom even.
Well, DeGrom's missed a couple starts, but yeah, I mean he's been there most of the year. But you look at that team, and um, I mean right now I don't think Philly's going to catch them because their bullpen is atrocious. Their pitching staff is real top heavy, and their lineup's inconsistent. The Braves have had so many injuries to their lineup, and the fact that without their superstar, you're looking at a team that really just doesn't have enough firepower. Although the starting pitching's been a lot better, plus they have a bad bullpen. Um, you look at the Nationals, and I just don't think their lineup is anywhere sustainable, especially with Schwarber not. Schwarber had to have like the best month of his career for them to even get back in the contention,
Right.
and then the Marlins are the Marlins. So, um, I really think the Mets are going to win this division now with the Braves injuries, and unless the Phillies can add a piece, or maybe even the Braves still go out and add a big piece or something, which I don't think would be a very wise thing to do unless it's a multi-year type thing. Um, I think it's going to be tough to catch the Mets right now just because of this division's just bad in general. This division's been bad all year. Nobody's really stood out as a good team. whoever wins this division, it's like the Central was last year. Whoever wins it's just not going to really do much in the postseason. So, but I guess I guess it's hard to bet against the Mets right now in this one. So
Yeah, especially because they're gonna Carrasco looks like he's gonna be on his way back pretty soon. He's starting to throw bullpens, so that's gonna be a de facto trade deadline deal. Acquisition that they're gonna get back. Francisco Lindor has started picking it up the past couple weeks. He struggled basically all year. I think he's hit like 227 all year. The past couple weeks he's hit over 300. A couple big home runs. Conforto had a big home run the other day. Maybe he's starting to come back. Turn around after his injury and then slow start. So I definitely do think the Mets. I don't think that the Phillies have the bullpen or the starting pitching depth to really come around, and they have one of the worst defensive teams in the
yeah,
league. That doesn't help at all. Like you said, Atlanta losing Acuna, that's just a big blow at this point. Like you said, unless they make some massive deal, but it might not be smart to do that at this moment. Maybe you trade off a guy like Charlie Morton and maybe another one piece here that you guys only have for the rest of the year,
yeah,
and reload for next year.
yeah.
The Nationals. I mean, they're a team that people are saying they shouldn't sell now, and I'm like, no, they should sell. Like
They should definitely
trade
sell.
trade Max Scherzer. Like you aren't going to compete this year,
As
especially
bad
with
as
Schwarber
as
out.
bad as this division has been, the
Yeah,
Nationals are not a good team at all. They
no,
they really their lineup is atrocious, and their starting rotation outside of Scherzer and Strasburg when he pitches has been
right.
atrocious, and their bullpen's not very good. I mean, they're really just not a good team,
Well, I
and
mean,
they've been carried by just the absolutely insane month from Kyle Schwarber. But other than
yeah.
that, I mean, they're one of the worst teams in
I,
the National League. I
I
feel
mean,
like.
they came into the year with Starling Castro as their starting third baseman.
Yeah,
So
I
I mean,
mean,
that should say pretty much everything we need to know about the Nationals season.
yeah, they got a couple really
But
good players in Turner and Soto and
yeah,
Schwarber this year when he's played. Well, I have to say that when he's played, he's only been out for like a week, but he's not gonna be back for a little while. But and
yeah,
obviously a couple of their pitchers, but I mean they're just not a very good team. And the Marlins have a great pitching rotation, but their lineup is just not good. And the Marlins have been pretty unlucky too. They've had a lot of close losses, and
yeah.
honestly, I feel like they've played every bit as well as the Nationals or the Braves, for that matter, this year. They
Yeah,
just have had some of those close losses. So
yeah, they just played the Dodgers right after the Dodgers swept the Nationals. The Marlins played them, and I believe they took 3 out of 4 from them. Yeah, they took 3 out of 4 from LA. That they had, I mean, their pitching staff: Alcantara, Lopez, Trevor Rogers. I mean, those three are dynamite. They're not going to get Sixto Sanchez back this year. He ended up having, I believe it was shoulder surgery again, so he's out for the rest of the year. But
yeah,
this team, I mean, they're in talks supposedly with Marte about getting an extension done. I think this team's a lot, like you said, they're a lot better than what their record shows. I think they could be closer to a 500 team. Yeah, had they not dealt with a bunch of injuries this year, like Sixto being out, Brian Anderson was out for has been out for a couple months. At Starling Marte missed some time. You're talking Garrett Cooper, who's played phenomenal for them since he came back off the IL. He missed quite a bit of time. Jesus Aguilar has played really good for them too. Jazz Chisholm is a star in the making. This team is really good. That they just need to get healthy and to develop a little bit more, and they could
yeah,
be right up there.
yeah. I mean, they still have had pieces that areas that they really need help, like center
Yeah,
field. I guess Marte's played in center field part of the time, but he's really not a center fielder. Um, they're going to have one outfield spot that's kind of empty. They did call up somebody, but they've kind of struggled. And then some of those young guys, like Jazz Chisholm, was off to a fire start, but ever since then, he really hasn't been quite as good. He's struggling with the strikeout bug, which he's a young player. That's always been his kind of his fallback. His downfall has been strikeouts. So it's kind of a part of the learning curve for him. Although you look at him and you think, wow, this guy might be a future star. That's kind of been an issue. They struggle at catcher. Um, Miguel Rojas hasn't been quite as good as he was last year and started the season this year. Ever since he, got hurt and came back, he hadn't been quite as good. So, I mean, they're offensively challenged still, although they have more potential on that side than we had kind of seen before this year. But yeah, I like this team, and I think they got a lot of potential, especially with the great farm system that they have now too.
Yeah, they do have a really good farm system. So let's move over to the NL Central now, where Milwaukee's leading this division by 4 games over Cincinnati. Cincinnati's 3.5 back of that wild card. You got the Cubs back in third, 8 games back, kind of falling back from this division, 7.5 out of the wild card. So it's another one of those where the Cubs and the Cardinals. It's pretty much looking like they're going to be out of contention for this division.
Yeah, the Cubs should have a yard sale. They've got
Yeah,
a, or let's rephrase it. They should have an estate sale because they're going to be dead for a few years. But um, they have tons of guys that they can sell, and they're not going to be very good for a few years. They've been really bad lately. They have no depth, and some of those players that they have to sell have underachieved at times. So I feel like they can still get stuff for him, like Chris Bryant. They can still get stuff for Chris Bryant, and they're quite obviously not going to win this year. 44-46. Um, you know, I just don't expect them to contend. And then the Cardinals, I saw this coming a mile away.
yeah.
Adding Arenado is not going to fix that team. They don't have good pitching. Their offense has too many holes in it. Although Arenado helped that, it's not like he can play in 6 different positions. And
And Tyler
you know,
O'Neill's having a great year too.
yeah, Tyler O'Neill's having a good year. Goldschmidt's still fine, but he's not what he once was. Paul DeYoung's not quite as good as he once was, but they lost Colton Wong. They don't really have a good second baseman. You look at their outfield, and I mean, Dylan Carlson's in one spot, and he's having a pretty good rookie year, but um, Molina's that catcher, and he's 38 years old or something, and he is what he is at this point. He's still a serviceable catcher, but he's not a star anymore. And obviously their pitching staff. I mean, they really just don't have any good pitchers. I mean, they got, I guess Flaherty has pitched well at times, but like you just other than that, I mean, your
Well, that
starting
and
rotation and then the bullpen. Alex Reyes has been nice as a kind of a breakout at catcher. I mean, as a back end of the bullpen guy, but other than him, I mean, not much there. So
they are missing Dakota Hudson this year to Tommy John, who had a really good year last year, and they was hoping to be one of their frontline people this year. Um, so that's another thing to that pitching staff that's really that's hurt them quite a bit. Flaherty being out with his oblique injury. Wainwright's serviceable. He's been all right this year, but like you said, the starting pitching depth's not good. Losing Colton Wong was a big hurt for this team. That on base percentage and the guy that, or not on base percentage, the contact guy that he is, and second base and that really good defense, they're missing that. And I think we both had them at fourth in this division in our preseason picks. So this isn't very surprising to us. Or no, we had them at third. Sorry. I don't think it's really surprising to us at all. I think the team surprising us most out of this division is probably Cincinnati.
yeah, and here's the deal with the Central. We all knew coming in that this division could be kind of weird with we didn't know out of these 4 teams which one was going to kind of figure it out this year. I think we both picked the Brewers if I remember
Yes.
correctly, but um the Brewers, pitching their pitching's good enough to where we felt like they probably were the safest team because they have the 2 elite starters already, and then they have 2 elite relievers, which one hasn't been as good as he was last year, but um, you know they're not as good as their record is, but I think the Brewers are still kind of the team to beat here. But yeah, the Reds have had bounce backs, and we talked about it, coming in that they could have bounce back performances from some of their guys, like Castellanos, who after a hot start last year really didn't play all that well the rest of the year. We talked about Suarez, but he hadn't really bounced back. But you look at Joey Votto, he's been better this year than he was last year. Um, and then just some of their young guys stepping up a little bit too, like Jonathan India, Nick Senzel. They needed some pieces to step up, and they needed
Winker.
some help offensively. Winker, Jesse Winker. And then I do think they need some bullpen help. I think they need to go add in their bullpen. Amir Garrett's been atrocious. Um, they really don't have a very good bullpen, and that's
It-
probably what I would add to.
So
But
that was the question I was going to have. Do you think that this team should make the push to try and win the division?
oh yeah, no doubt this team should buy. I think. I mean,
Because
you're 4 games behind a team that has no offense. So you can, if you're able to get another starting pitcher for the Reds, you already got Sonny Gray up there. Castillo's finally started to pitch a little bit better, and you know you've got Wade Miley's pitched well this year. Tyler Molly's pitched well. You go find another pitcher to add to them, and starting pitcher and a reliever. I think you can definitely catch the Brewers.
so,
This division's not over. You're not
so
gonna make the wild card, but
would you say a trade for like Jose Brios and Taylor Rogers for this team would
yeah, I
be a
mean,
good trade?
if you're able to pull that off, then I mean, I think that puts them neck and neck with the Brewers at the end of the season. The Brewers are just so offensively challenged. Yelich isn't the same guy as he was, and I mean, other than they just don't have anybody.
Right.
There's not a single guy in the Brewers lineup that really scares you as a pitcher. Like maybe Yelich still makes you nervous just because of his
His
but he hadn't been
pedigree.
good but he hadn't been good in 2 years. I mean,
Right.
then you look at their maybe a Visael Garcia, but I mean, he's kind of a journeyman player that has had a hot start this year. Narvaez has been pretty good so far, but I mean, other than
Those
those
guys don't
guys,
put
like
fear in your
they really don't, and they picked up Willie Adames, who has been a good addition for them, but um, I mean, there's really just nobody. Keston Hiura really hadn't taken a step forward this year. Really, I don't really think he took a step back because he wasn't very good last year either. But he's kind of mired in that we don't know if he's even a big leaguer now type thing.
Right.
So, um, I mean, I definitely think the Reds they've got enough talent in that lineup to where if you add a couple pitchers there with the guys that they already have, I think they could definitely catch the Brewers. They played really well as of late, and they can definitely get on a roll. But I don't think any of the teams in this division are that good.
Right.
But
Well,
there's definitely something there. So
well, that'll be a story for us to definitely keep up on in the next couple weeks about what the Reds can do in this division and maybe what the Milwaukee Brewers do and how much the Cubs actually do sell off. So, be one of the more interesting divisions to watch going up to this deadline. But
no doubt.
let's jump over to the NL West where I still don't think that anybody thought that the San Francisco Giants would be leading this division right now, albeit by 2 games over the Dodgers. And the Padres they've fallen back to 6 games back, but they still play really well in this division.
Yeah, this has been a really good division. This has definitely been the most entertaining division in baseball this year. You know, you look at first off, the one thing that just if you look at the division breakdown here, the one thing that jumps off the page to me is the Rockies are 31-17 at home.
Yeah,
Like they're 18 games back and they're 40-51 overall, but they've won. They're 14 over 500 at home. They're 9-34 on the road. I don't even know how that happened. I know they have cores and it's so different. I don't know how that happens. But anyways, you look at the Giants at the top. Um, we'll see what they do. I still don't believe they can keep up the pace they're at.
yeah,
But I mean, they've got legitimately good pitching that they've found stuff with guys. And, you look at their lineup, and I'm worried about their lineup being able to sustain because it's a lot of veteran players. I'm worried about them being able to do it all year for 162 games. That second half push, wear and tear. You already see it. Buster Posey went on the IL. I'm sure it's a very short stint. It's probably just a 10-day stint over the All Star break part of it too. Um, Brandon Crawford's been so big for them. He's a veteran shortstop. Is he going to be able to do it all year? Um, you know, I think there's a lot of question marks. Brandon Belt's another guy. There's a lot of question marks for the Giants the rest of the season. But they got such a good record right now. You add a couple pieces, I think you'll probably see them in the wild card game. Um, because I do think the Dodgers or maybe even the Padres are going to catch them. But um, you go down the list, you look at the Dodgers, and obviously they're who they are. 21 games above 500, and they're finally healthy for the most part again. And you look at the Padres, and it's kind of the same deal. They are who they are. We knew they coming in that they were going to be really good. Um, The thing that worries me a little bit from the Padres is some of the inconsistency they've gotten out of a couple of their pitchers who we expected to be really good, like Blake Snell. Um, he's been very disappointing this year. But these three teams are gonna. I think it's gonna they're gonna duke it out the rest of the season. It's gonna be entertaining to see who comes out in this division.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see also who at the deadline makes the biggest swing in this division. Because the Padres, they could use a starter, they could use some bullpen help. The Dodgers, they can use a starter and bullpen help, maybe another bat, depending on what they want to do with their outfield situation. The Giants are probably the team that needs the bat most of all, but they could also use another depth piece for that starting rotation. Even though they've got great production so far, it's going to be interesting to see which one of these teams takes that swing to say like, okay, no, I'm going to be the one that steps up in this division, or throws the first punch and see how the other two react. But it's definitely going to be interesting. The Padres, they seem to play the Dodgers really well. They seem to have the Dodgers numbers, but against everybody else, they seem to struggle a little bit more. The Dodgers have been not healthy all year. They're starting to get back there. The Giants, like they said, their old guys have had a resurgence per se, and they're playing really well now.
Yeah,
Are they going to be able to keep that up for the long haul through the dog days through the second half of the season? It's going to be really interesting to
yeah,
watch.
and that with the Giants, they could have 1 week where with the amount of veteran players and injury-prone players they have, they could go from being a truly really good talented team to having nobody left. I
Right.
mean, you could have there could be a week where you lose because Alex Wood's been very good for them. And he's a very injury-prone pitcher. You could lose him. Obviously Posey, Belt. You already lost Longoria for an extended period. You know, you could all of a sudden lose two or three guys and then not be anywhere near where you are now. So I worry about that standpoint for the Giants. And then of course, like you talk about the Padres, I think there's times where the Padres lose a little bit of focus maybe when they play some of some of the lower rated competition. I mean, um, they're a really young team. They play with a lot of energy and excitement. And I think sometimes when the energy and excitement's not there in the ballpark, they don't feed off of it quite as well. So there's times where I think they give away some games that they probably shouldn't because they're just the energy's not there. So that's not all the time or anything, but I think I'd like to see a little bit more consistency out of them.
Oh,
So
you could definitely see that they get up for those big games against the people that they should get up against, and that's when they play their best baseballs, when the lights are bright and the pressure's on. So they do lull against some teams that they should probably beat. So, but it's going to be interesting with all these teams. Like we said, the trade deadline's coming up in just, I think, a little over 2 weeks. It's on the 31st, so 2 weeks from this Saturday is going to be the trade deadline, and it's going to be interesting. We're going to start seeing deals happen. Over the, I think most likely we're going to start probably this next week. You're going to start hearing a lot. You've seen already rumors about Eduardo Escobar pretty much getting traded. Adam Frazier is another guy that seems like he's on the road out. Kyle Gibson even is another guy that sounds like he's probably going to get traded.
yeah,
And then,
you also look at Trevor Story, Joey
yep,
Gallo, um, and then maybe even some guys that all the Cubs guys. You look at
exactly.
Bryant and maybe even I kind of doubt they trade Rizzo, but
Yeah,
I guess
I
it's
think that's the
possible.
one guy they keep. I mean, they might even trade Contreras right now. I mean, it'll be interesting if a team that needs a catching help is really willing to make a move. I mean, they could. I would not be surprised
Yeah,
to see the
you could and then
Cubs Contreras.
you could see a couple really big impact players, veteran pitchers that Charlie Morton, Max Scherzer, are a
Yep.
couple guys that I'm thinking of. Charlie Morton, if the Braves, don't if the Braves struggle coming out of the break and lose a couple games after the injury to Acuna, I think they'll sell. So that would be Charlie Morton, and then obviously Scherzer with the Nationals struggling. He's been so good this year. If you're the, I feel like you would want to sell him if you're the Nationals if you possibly could. But it'll be very interesting. You could maybe even see a couple of longer term like a Herman Marquez from the Rockies get traded type guys like that. So it's gonna be very interesting to see. I think we're gonna have a pretty wild trade deadline this year. I think there's going to be a lot of moving parts. We really didn't have one last year with it being the shortened season and stuff. We had a few big trades, but nothing like I think what we're going to see this year. So
Yeah, it's going to be a monster trade deadline if I can say that. So, well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode. You got anything else?
I don't think so. Obviously, you know, I think it's good to have the All Star break here in the middle of the season. And I think it's good for a lot of teams to have that rest and recovery, especially this year. Hopefully in the second half, we see a cut in some of these injuries that we've seen, and some of them like the Acuna injury is not really some kind of like soft tissue injury that's from wear and tear. That's one of those kind of freak his knee bent the wrong way type things. But you see other injuries that, a lot of soft tissue injuries stuff this year. Hopefully this break helps some of that and get some guys some days off. So but I'm excited for the second half. I think there's going to be some really good division battles. We're getting down into the nitty gritty of the season, the fun part of the season. Um, and it won't be long till we're talking about the playoffs and who's in and who's out, and what's going to happen in the postseason this year, and get along to the World Series. So um, I'm very excited. But no players of the week this week because obviously with the All Star break, they haven't played many games, so we'll probably do a combined for last week and then this weekend on the show next week. So it'll be on the lookout for that. So
Yeah, you pretty much summed it all up. So, thank you guys for tuning into this episode of the Bat Flip Podcast, and we'll catch you guys next week.
thanks everybody.